Welcome everybody to our webinar today. And this is kind of a team effort between the good folks at Hahnemühle and Digital Silver Imaging. I really want to thank Vincent and Catherine for allowing us to do this great webinar opportunity here. We've been printing inkjet since 2010, and I think ever since then we've been big fans of Hahnemühle. And Hahnemühle has been around for centuries. So I think I can say that. They're a brand that's, the epitome of quality in paper. So let me introduce first the team from Hahnemühle. We have today, most of the presentation, the heavy lifting is going to be done by Vincent Royer, who is the sales representative for digital products in the Northeast. And he's an expert on paper and printing papers. And Vincent's going to give you some really terrific information. And monitoring the chat and the Q&A is Catherine Greenlee, and she's in Chicago. Vincent's in Brooklyn, and Catherine is the marketing manager, so she's got a pretty big job. On the Digital Silver Imaging side, we're joined by myself. I'm a partner at Digital Silver Imaging. I've been involved in one way in the photo industry for a long time, longer than I'd care to mention. Also with my old friend and also business partner, the founder of Digital Imaging, Eric Luden. Eric's been with Ilford and Kodak, and we've both worked in photo retail together. So Eric goes back a long way too, not as far as me, but almost. And also on the Digital Silver Imaging side is Joe Frio, and Joe is a master printer. Joe has an extensive experience in printing and also has been involved in the educational spheres for a long time. So Joe is a good teacher. So with that, I say, let's jump right into it.
Yes, well, thank you, Andrea. I will start to tell you a little bit about Hahnemühle. It's much more interesting than to talk about Catherine and RI because the company has been there for so long. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a few images to show you during this short presentation. So I'm going to share that, and it's going to be easier. Thank you again, Digital Silver Imaging, for doing this with us. I think it's a great partnership. Paper is great. We love to make paper, to make it available to everyone, even if there is a big ocean between the US and Germany. We're very happy to make this work happen, but it doesn't mean anything if there is no one printing on it, if there is no people with the knowledge on how to print, if there are no artists that want to print on our paper. So that's just, I think the best way to do it is to do it together with a studio like you. A little bit about Hahnemühle. It's a very old company, that's for sure. It's been around for 441 years already. The first mill was built in 1584 by Merton Spies, who got the authorization to do that. And then in 1886, the real name Hahnemühle was used for the first time to describe this mill. And actually, it's just because Karl Hahne, a German guy, bought the mill and decided to put his name on the mill. So Mühle in German means mill, the mill, and Hahne is just his last name. And it means, if you translate it, it would mean rooster. So that's why our little logo is a red rooster now. It's just heritage from our owner, Karl Hahne, who rebranded the mill as Hahnemühle. And so I can say sometimes Hahnemühle or Hahnemühle. It's just I would say the US and the German way to say it, but it's the same thing. And there is another key date for me, which is 1997. It's the first year where we decided to add a special coating on top of the papers that we had been making for 400 years. And this special coating allows to get good prints on a digital printer. And so that was the start of our digital range of papers. So that's for us, because probably most of you are either photographers or artists who are looking at reproducing by printing your original artworks. I think for us that's an important key date. Since then, we've had our paper on board the International Space Station. We've won many awards because we are a very old company, but also quite an innovative one. And just 1 year ago, about 1 year ago, our paper was chosen to be the official paper for printing the FineArt posters of the Paris 2024 Olympics. So that's just a few highlights of what happened in the last 25 years or so since we introduced the first inkjet FineArt papers. But there is a question: how do you survive for 400 years as a company? That's a very long time. I wish you digital silver imaging to last for 400 years. It's very uncommon to have companies that last that long. You need to make very good, high quality products, that's for sure, if you want to survive. But it's not enough. You need to be very consistent. And that's also, I think, something that we share with you at DSI, consistency in how you print on the papers and consistency in how we make the papers to start with. You need to innovate, like I said. So we have some papers that are uncommon, that are unique on the market, and we are going to see one in particular later on. And then and that's pretty new in the way we present what we do, but that's something that has been important for Hahnemühle for a very long time. We are, I think, a sustainable company. Of course, producing paper has an impact on the environment. If you want to be perfect, just stop using paper all at once. But if you need to use paper because you're an artist, you want to print, if you want to do something that's going to last for a long time and that you don't have to redo again and again, then I think Hahnemühle is a good choice, because we make sustainable papers and we make it in a sustainable way too. So we carefully select the ingredients, and I'm going to talk about the ingredients just after. We have a very very respectful use of the water that we need for the paper making process, because we actually get the water from a source that's on the premises of the company, and we know if we are not good stewards of this area of our company territory, if we're not good stewards of the environment, we're not going to be able to benefit from a high quality water for long enough to continue to make good papers over time. So we need to be conscious of that. It's very important. It's been for forever at Hahnemühle, also because the mill never moved. It's been in the same exact position for 441 years. And so, we need to take care of that, of the water. That is very important. It's important because the water that we get is pure, and so we don't need to pay for extra chemicals to use in the paper making process, and that's just better for the quality of the paper, and that's better for everyone. And because we have this sensibility about the environment, we decided in 2008, when we launched the first bamboo paper, and bamboo is an interesting sustainable fiber, we decided to launch also a program called the Green Rooster, which is basically 5% of everything that we make, selling sustainable papers that are in a group of paper that we call the natural line. 5% of these profits are going to environmental initiatives or social initiatives. And the last one is that we sponsor this Prints for Wildlife. It's still ongoing at the moment, and it's a group of about, I think it's 100 photographers that meet together and select pictures that they're going to auction, that they are going to sell for it lasts about a month, and all the money that is raised doing that goes to preserving the environment, building water wells, etc. So that's a way to at the same time benefit creation of new photographs by a photographer, just It's a way to sponsor their work, and it's also a way to give back to something that we need and is a healthy environment. So that's just a little bit about the company and our spirit, I would say. Now I told you that I was going to go back to the ingredients, because the title of this talk, webinar, call it how you like, is to choose the right paper. And I think if you want to choose something, it's like when you go to the supermarket, you need to understand a little bit better what goes into the paper, into the fabrication. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the ingredients. I told you we need pure water. Our water comes from our own wells. The important criteria here is neutral pH. So it needs to be not too acidic, not too basic. It needs to be exactly like the water that we drink, actually. It needs to be neutral. And then we have the fibers. I split this category, the fibers, in two smaller ones. We have what I call the traditional fibers, which are in the modern era, cotton linters and alpha-cellulose. So cotton has been a fiber used for paper making for a very, very long time, originally from rags and other types of textiles that were given a second life by being turned into paper. And then in the 19th century, we started using more and more alpha-cellulose because there was just not enough cotton available on the planet to print newspapers. So newspapers have had a big impact. They have had a big impact on paper production because we need so much paper to print newspapers. These two fibers, we continue to use them today. They have slightly different properties, but both of them, they can be archival if they are used the right way. So cotton is archival by default, almost. That's quite easy. Cellulose is coming from wood. So we don't just use cellulose, we use what we call the alpha-cellulose, which is fibers of wood that were processed to remove the lignin and hemicellulose. And these two elements are what give the color brown to wood. So basically, if we don't remove this, the paper will be brown and it will become browner and browner with the time. So we need to remove these two elements, lignin and hemicellulose, to make sure we will be able to make a white paper that's going to stay white for as long as possible. Eventually, after a while, a century, 2 centuries, 5 centuries, it will start to yellow anyway, because that's just a living product in a way. But the goal is to slow down this process of yellowing as much as possible. So cotton and alpha-cellulose are quite classic, and you will see them used by most of the paper manufacturers. But at Hahnemühle, because also of this sustainability sensibility, we use also different fibers. So I told you we started with bamboo in 2008. Bamboo is very interesting because it's growing so fast. And since we added hemp, agave, and sugarcane, which are also interesting, they all grow faster than trees for sure. But in the case of agave and sugarcane, they are also byproducts of other industries like the sugar industry, for example. So we are trying to look at fibers that would not be used by other industries and see if we can do something with them. Right now, I know that there are talks with a startup in Germany that is known for working with pineapple skin that you can get from all the supermarkets that sell you the pineapples already cut in small pieces. So they found a way to process the pineapple skin to extract the fibers, and we're working with them to try to make paper for that. So that's just another example of what we try to do to reuse fibers that would be thrown to the trash otherwise. So yeah, alternative fibers and traditional fibers are used today at Hahnemühle. Whenever we use the alternative fibers, we always also add a little bit of cotton with it. It's a mix because we need the softness of the cotton to balance the sometimes stiffness of the other fibers. So it's always a mix, and we try to make that the perfect balance so that it will go into the printer path easily, and it will work well when you have to print on them. Now it's not only about water and fibers. There are also other ingredients, and some of them are very important for us. Kaolin is just for whiteness, basically. Chalk is very important. Chalk is basically what makes a modern paper archival. There is an ISO international norm that standardized what is an archival paper. It's called the ISO 9706. You don't have to remember exactly the number of the norm, but basically it gives guidelines on how to make paper that's going to last at least about 60 years. And in the guidelines, you will find that you need to use 2% of chalk or calcium carbonate in any recipe of paper to enhance the life expectancy of the paper. The way it works is chalk is going to react with the acidity in the environment. And so instead of the fibers turning yellow because they are attacked by the acidity, the chalk is going to act as a shield or as a buffer. It's going to take in all the acidity for a while. And then once the chalk is all eaten by the acidity, then the fibers are finally start to yellow. But it's just a very good way to slow down, again, the process of the fibers yellowing. So chalk is important. We use in Hahnemühle FineArt papers, we use at least 4%. That's what we consider to be the sweet spot between a little bit more than what is required to improve the archivability of the paper, but not too much, otherwise it wouldn't be paper anymore. So 4% is for us the sweet spot. Sizing is important for people doing watercolor paintings and stuff like that, not that much for printers, but coating is very, very important. Coating, so the three other elements, they get into the paper recipe, they get into the fibers. Coating is only at the top of the paper. We first make the paper and then we coat it with the coating. And it's what makes a paper look really, really good when you print on it on a digital printer. It's just sometimes you will see ink receiving layer, and that's what it does. The ink, instead of going into the paper, will be received and will stay at the level of the coating. And so you will have very precise dots of ink at the surface instead of having, like when you do watercolor, you drop a little bit of ink on the paper and then it gets into the fibers instantly. So the coating prevents that from happening, and you will get precise dots, you will get deeper blacks, and you will get more vivid colors. And that's something that Jorik and Andrea, when you print, if you ever one day put the paper sheet in the wrong orientation in the paper, that it was missing the blacks and the vivid colors, which can be beautiful in itself, but it's an experimentation, but it's not what you want to obtain. You want to obtain deep blacks and vivid colors, and then you work on the file to change the colors if you want. So coding is very important as well as chalk. And I will see, there will probably be a question about another ingredient in the chat. I will wait until I have the question. If I don't have it at the end of the presentation, I can talk about the fifth ingredient that we often have questions about. And then, so that's about the ingredients. I have a whole presentation about how do we actually make paper and how do the machines that we use look like, but it's just too much for this for today's presentation. So I'm going to skip that and just very briefly explain that we have two different lines of papers, two different collections, we say. One is the digital FineArt collection, in which we have the most exquisite papers, and the other one is the photo collection with more affordable papers that are going to be good enough. Some of them are archival, some of them not that much. They are going to be good enough for everyday printing, but not if you want to do an art print that you're going to sell or that you're going to give to a museum or something like that. In the FineArt, digital FineArt collection, we have different chapters. We have the natural line with all the papers made using alternative fibers. So I told you about the fibers earlier. We have the bamboo paper, hemp, agave, sugarcane. And then last year we added the first glossy paper to this collection. So this chapter, which is the bamboo gloss baryta. And I can tell you, because it's now more or less public, that we are going to launch in a few weeks another paper called Hemp Gloss Baryta. It's being tested right now as the official paper for the Prints for Wildlife initiative. So that's why I say it's more or less public. We didn't do the proper launch, but it's already being used. And it's going to be a second glossy paper in that chapter. Then we have a chapter that is all about matte, smooth papers. Slightly different papers. Photorag was the first one. Then we added a brighter, whiter, cooler version to it, which is the Photorag Bright Whites. We added a smoother version for some photographers that wanted paper that has no expression in itself, that would be completely flat, that would let the image speak alone. And that's the Photorag Ultra Smooth. And then we added just a couple of years ago the Photorag Matte Baryta, which is quite similar to the Ultra Smooth, but without any OBAs, optical brighteners. And that's also something interesting. Now I will have the question for sure. Photorag Duo and Photorag Book and Album are two double-sided papers for different types of use. And rice paper is the thinnest paper we have in our whole collection. It's about 100 GSM. So it's a little bit more thicker, a little bit more heavy than what you would have in your copier, in your regular printer copier. But it's what is really great with that paper is you can still get deep blacks and vivid colors, even though it's so thin. It's going to warp a little bit when you print, then you let it rest, and usually it comes back to its original flatness. So that's interesting because you get something counterintuitive. You get deep blacks, vivid colors on a very thin paper. We have then a chapter about textured papers. So Albrecht Dürer and Torchon, they are very specific. You have to at some point to see them, and we will talk about how we can do that, experience the papers later on. But at some point, you probably need to see them to understand what they look like. William Turner, German etching and museum etching, it's easier because they look like what you know as a watercolor paper, probably. William Turner is the most textured one, and then German etching is a little less, and museum etching even a little less textured. We have then glossy papers. That's another whole chapter. And it starts to be more complicated with the glossy papers because there are more words that we use to describe them that can make it confusing, like satin and pearl and baryta and metallic, and sometimes it can be confusing even for me or probably also for you, even with a long experience of what papers look like. When there is a new paper and someone says, oh, we are going to do a new satin paper, until you see it, it's very difficult to know what satin exactly it is. So I tried to make it make sense a little bit on that slide. On the top row, top row, you have the Photorag satin, Photorag pearl. You see they all start with Photorag, and that's because all the papers that start with Photorag in our range are 100% cotton papers. It doesn't mean that William Turner, for example, in this case, is not also 100% cotton. It is. So it's not working in both directions, but every time you see Photorag, you can be sure it's 100% cotton paper. And cotton is usually what's regarded as the most archival fiber of all fibers. So that's why it's important to say it also in the name of the paper. And then on the bottom row, you have FineArt, Baryta Satin, FineArt Pearl, FineArt Baryta, Baryta FB. All of these, they start either with FineArt or they have different name like Baryta FB. These are usually made of 100% alpha-cellulose fibers, sorry. And so basically it's either Photorag, it has a different name, and then you need to check probably what's the fiber, or it has the name of the fiber in the name of the paper. In this case, the second row, they're all alpha-cellulose papers. And then I tried to make it work also with the columns. So the first column is satin paper, second one is pearl. And satin and pearl are words that have been used for a very long time. It didn't start with the digital papers. It was already there with darkroom papers. These are terms that we use to describe something that is not very high gloss. Usually something that has a slight texture at the surface that is going to reflect some light. It's going to be glossy, but not too much glossy. Photorock baryta, FineArt baryta, and the other ones on the right, the two columns on the right, they are much more glossier, but still, since they are fiber-based paper, they are real paper, you will still see some texture at the surface, and that just comes from the fact that it's a raw paper to start with. The base paper is an artist paper, and there is always some type of texture at the surface. Even something like the ultra smooth or the Photorock matte baryta, like I said, is completely flat when it's matte. But if you try to add a glossy coating on top of that, you will still see the texture. So that's why all the glossy papers that we have, we call them glossy, but they are never completely smooth and high glossy. There is always some texture to it. And then just to talk a little bit more about the Photorock metallic, I told you that we have to innovate to survive as a company for 400 years. Well, the Photorock metallic is something that that's completely unique on the market. And sometimes there are some things that you just can't see on the screen when you're preparing your files, when you're doing what we call soft proofing, emulating the rendering of the print on the paper at the end of the process. There are some things that are very difficult to emulate, that you can't really emulate, like the aspect of a mother of pearl, the aspect of an aluminum board, something like that. And so you have to introduce new papers sometimes to open the field of possibilities that artists have. And that's what we try to do with the Photorock metallic. It's a paper that has, for me, it's more like a mother of pearl than metal, because I feel it's very warm and not cold like metal can be sometimes. But it's definitely shiny, very shiny, and it has these metallic reflections in it. So not something you can see on your screen, but something you can try. And again, we will see later, but DSI has a very good opportunity for you to try different papers. So I would just invite you to try it if you're interested in what I said. So that's it for papers. Then we have a few canvases, matte canvases, glossy canvases. Goya canvas is a satin canvas. Canvas metallic is similar to what we have with the Photorock metallic. And the other ones, they're just different types of matte canvases with different surfaces. So that's it for the FineArt range. You see, it's a big range. We have a lot of choices, and that's why we do this talk about how to choose the right paper. That's why sometimes it also needs to be a conversation, because you can feel stuck. You don't know which paper to choose. There are too many that you really like, and it needs to be a conversation also with the printing studio, and it makes a lot of sense for me to do it with DSI for that reason. And then in the photo collection, we have a much smaller range. We just have one paper that is matte, photomatte fiber. It exists in a regular and double-sided version, which we call duo. We have, I'm going to skip the third one. We have then photoglossy, photoluster, and photopearl, which are what we call RC papers. When I talked to you about the ingredients, I didn't say anything about RC papers because I was focusing more on how we make FineArt papers and paper in itself. RC papers are not just paper. They're actually a sandwich of one sheet of paper in between two films of plastic, which was great in the 60s when it was used heavily to save water, because in the darkroom we had to rinse the prints, and having a paper that was very compact in between two plastic films made it very easy to rinse, and you didn't have to spend that much water rinsing the paper. So that was, believe it or not, but quite ecological to use it. I hope that digital silver imaging is not rinsing the digital prints anymore, because that really doesn't make any sense in the process. So today we don't really need RC papers anymore. We continue to have them because they are a continuity between the darkroom and the digital printing world, but we don't really need them. And that's why we launched the third one in this slide, sustainable photo satin, which looks like an RC papers, but there is no plastic in it. And the good thing to that is that it's recyclable. So you can, when you're done with a print, you can throw it in the trash can, and it's going to be recycled with the other papers without any problem. And then we have at the end of this list, PhotoSilk Baryta X, which is the comeback of a Baryta entry-level paper that used to exist years ago. It's a very easy to work with paper. It's a good first try if you want to switch from RC papers or from lower end papers, and you want to try something that is Baryta, that has a little bit more of a sheen than a shine, that is a little bit more subtle, and but you don't want to spend too much money on it because you're still not sure about where it's going, then PhotoSilk Baryta X is a good option. And the last one is Photo Canvas, which is just a more affordable canvas that is not as archival as the FineArt canvases. So that's it for the photo collection. I told you that the ISO norm gives us the guidelines to make paper that's going to last about 60 years. Some of these papers, they're going to last maybe 60 years, like Photomat Fiber, PhotoSilk Baryta X, probably, maybe PhotoPer. The other ones, probably not. Sustainable photo satin is good, actually, but the other ones is probably about 30 years, something like that. And compared to the FineArt, digital FineArt collection, here we are talking about centuries. It can be 100+ years if it's well kept. In a museum, it's going to be 2, 3, 4 centuries without any issues. And then it's gonna start to drift to yellow a little bit, but it's not going to be unusable. You don't have to put a print to the trash just because it starts to yellow. It's just naturally evolving. And a lot of the vintage prints that we buy at a very high price today, they are not exactly what they used to be when they just got out of the darkroom. So that's just also a little bit of a philosophical reflection, thinking about what happens to the prints. But yeah, they are archival. They are going to change eventually at some point, but it's not a big deal. What we want is just to slow down the process so they remain comparable to what they were when they were printed for as long as possible. And I think that's all that I have to say, really. That's everything I can say in that short time about paper and what they are made of and the full range that we have. But I would really like to hear about how you guys at Digital Silver Imaging use those papers to make great prints. So now is your turn.
Thank you, Vincent, for that very informative discussion. I learned a lot of new things today about the papers and the production and the care that goes into making a really good paper, which is why we've been such a fan of Hahnemühle for so many years. We, just so everybody knows, about 7 or 8, maybe 9 years ago now, we switched from Epson printers to Canon printers. So we are using Canon printers exclusively in our shop. We have found them to be very reliable, very archival, according to Henry Wilhelm, who does all that kind of research, and just real good workhorses. So for any of you who are using Canon printers, or Epson, it doesn't really matter. It's really about your workflow. And I hope that everybody on here who's serious about printing has a calibrated monitor. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you start with a calibrated monitor. And that's whether you print with us, yourself, or send off to another lab. I would seriously encourage you to go to Calibrite. They are the new company behind X-Rite. So they call themselves Calibrite, and invest in one of their monitors. calibrator software. They've come down in price, and I believe, I can't guarantee this, I believe if you shop on the Calibrate website and use the code DSI for Digital Silver Imaging 10, they will still give you 10% off. So, but more importantly, if you have a Spider, if you have an X-Rite, pull it out of the drawer and do yourself a favor and recalibrate your monitor. It'll save you a lot of frustration. Most important. And the other thing that we do here that Joe does with Nick, who is our other printer, is we are constantly creating custom profiles off of our printers with the appropriate software. So we are in a very tightly controlled, calibrated environment, and which hopefully ensures color fidelity, which is so important. So I think one of the things that that we try to highlight here is Hahnemühle has a huge range of papers, and we don't stock every one of them, but we have come down to a selection of papers that we think satisfies most needs. And so if you're new to printing or trying to figure out stuff, everybody who works at the lab has studied photography. Everybody who is here is a photographer. We are an artist-run business. So when you call here, whoever you speak with, we're going to be able to give you advice about looking at an image, and we might be able to talk about, well, that might look really good on a matte paper, or we think one of the semi-gloss FineArt papers would be fine. Or if you tell us this is going to be on a short-term display, then one of the resin-coated papers is absolutely fine. So we're going to try to find the right product that fits your budget and your needs. That's really kind of our goal here. That's of what we try to do. One of the things I want to talk about quickly is that one of the things that we offer to try to help people make these decisions, which are, how does my paper going to look on a FineArt paper, a gloss paper, a matte paper, or maybe even a resin-coated paper? And I would, so we came up with something a while ago called the print sample promotion. And we offer, the other thing that we offer that some of you aren't familiar with us is we also can make, on our black and white prints, we can actually make true silver gelatin prints directly from digital files, which means your file comes to us, it goes through a light emitting big machine, looks like an MRI machine, exposing a light sensitive Ilford black and white paper, and it runs through traditional black and white chemicals. So on the output side is a real silver gelatin print. So if I could share my screen for a second, hopefully this will work. So you're going to get a link at the end of this webinar that's going to take you to a page that looks like this for our trying our print sample promotion. So since we're talking about inkjet, if you click on the inkjet part here, you get to choose between a vertical or horizontal image. And then from here, you get to select different papers that you could try that you're going to send us one file, and we're going to select, you're going to be able to select 3 different papers for your image. So you could see, what is my image going to look like on Hahnemühle Photorag Baryta? We try to talk a little bit about the paper here if you have questions. So we've tried to provide information about some of the papers. Or maybe, as Vincent said, the metallic would be something really cool. And I think the metallic is a really innovative paper. It looks great for different images. Black and white is cool. Astrophotography is really cool on it. Yes. And then, as he mentioned, like agave, this has become our favorite go-to matte paper in the lab. It's a new, I believe, if I'm right, Vincent, it's a newer emulsion technology. The blacks are very deep. It's typically on matte papers, this can be, you can sort of be compromised by the detail in the blacks. I love that this is a renewable paper and does a great job on in the DMAX area. So basically, you're going to be able to go through here, select the papers. You can hit begin creation. And from here, you would just upload a file. I apologize, my internet's a little slow at the moment. So you're going to start fresh, and then you click here, go to your computer, and pull up an image. upload it, upload one file, and you're going to hit process. And from here, the image is loaded in to the screen. You'll be able to see if it's going to fit. Oh, and I'm sorry, the print sample motion is always on 8.5 by 11 paper. So you can see over here the papers I selected. I'm going to select the Hahnemühle Photorag Baryta. I'm going to check the Ultra Smooth, which is a nice matte paper. And because it's black and white, I want to see it on metallic. And you can see the price here is $39. So what we're offering to people who are attending the webinar is that you're going to get this for $25 plus shipping. So we're taking $14 off. You will get the code for that when you see the email that's going to come after the webinar. So I think that's an important way just to test out our service, see how we do. I want to be really clear. We do not edit the files that we get in any way, shape, or form on this first test. And there's a reason for that, which is we want you to see exactly what your print looks like compared to your monitor. So, and in terms of I saw the question about format, the files should be in RGB 1998. It should be a JPEG, and I suggest sizing it so that it fits within an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I think that's something that's really important as a way of trying the papers. So you get to see your image as it's going to appear on these different papers. Yes, yes, Brian, Adobe RGB 1998, not sRGB, right, Joe? I mean, we're trying to keep it, sRGB is not ideal for the printing world. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's not ideal for printing. It is the smallest color space. It was invented for the web back when the web couldn't handle much. So. Yeah.
And what I know the other one people ask about, Joe, is Pro Photo RGB. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah. So the Pro Photo is what you want to be editing in if you have the choice. It's the largest. It's Lightroom's default. So if you're in Photoshop or you're in Lightroom or Capture One, even if you can change it there, I'm positive. Then the Pro Photo is going to give you the most color range, but all the printing, the softwares and the printers are set up for RGB. So then going to Adobe RGB to print is the ideal color space, and you won't see any drop off if you go and convert it. It's totally fine to convert it after the fact, but yeah.
Yes, Andrea.
So I just have something to add that you touched on earlier, which are ICC profiles. I know that we'll probably get some questions about that. So, in our lab, we create a different ICC profile for each individual printer. And a lot of people, along with ICC profiles, talk about soft proofing their images using an ICC profile. And we don't endorse that practice at all. Soft proofing, we feel, doesn't give you a very good idea of what the final print looks like, and actually could kind of steer you in the wrong direction. So just stay within that color space, the Adobe 1998 color space, and don't try to soft proof off your monitor with a profile that you might download. And if you're printing for yourself, I would also encourage you to buy maybe a higher end calibrator, so you can create your own profile for your printer. And there are also companies that will do that for you. I think Freestyle will make a custom profile for you for your own in-home printer. So that's something that you should really look into if you really want to be precise about color rendition and accuracy.
And since you brought it up, Andrea, there was someone in the chat asking about how you know which inks to use on which papers from which printers. So maybe you guys just talk about what an ICC profile is.
Yeah, I can do that. So an ICC profile, I wish I probably have something nearby. But what we do is we print the series. I think it's 1,750 different little squares of color, of shades of different colors and stuff like that, that are then jumbled randomly, so the calibrator can't guess like how it's supposed to look. And then what it does is it reads, or so then we print that on the papers that we print on. Like Andrea said, we have 4 different printers. We have to make one profile for each paper on all of our unique printers twice a year. So we do this a lot. So we print that. That sits in off gases, and then we take that with the fancy kind of calibrator that Eric was talking about, and we have to scan in each row one at a time, where the calibrator is going to read the colors, and what that's reading is how this printer prints this ink on this paper. So that way, when I have my calibrated monitor, I can then go immediately hit print and know that what I see is indeed printing on this printer. All printers are different, you know, they're all built the same, but they all age differently. And so it's important to calibrate for your printer and for your surroundings, right? Like here, it could be more humid in the summer than it might be in different parts of the country, or less humid. And the humidity can affect the inks and how things all relate. So it's important to calibrate for your environment and your equipment. So what that profile does is it tells the printer how much ink to use here and there. And magically, out of nowhere, I happen to find one right here. Just came to me in a dream. So this is the thing they print off. This one is actually for, I'm not going to say what paper it is, but we'll say it's for agave. So it is, so each row is a different color or different tone of the color. And that's what the calibrator has to then read. Yeah, that's basically what a profile, or the profiling or creating ICC profiles is.
So I don't know, maybe we could get into are we ready to jump into the Q&A perhaps? Vincent, what do you think? And Catherine?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, feel free to put any extra questions in the chat, but I'll just go off of what we've gotten so far. Catherine wants to know what papers you would recommend for black and white images. I know that you guys at Digital Silver Imaging have some samples to show us, so maybe we can start with that and talk about how to choose the paper for not just black and white, maybe color images too.
Yeah, I dropped everything off my desk. Yes, so we do have some different paper. The papers here we can talk about. I will say it's not as simple as saying what's best for black and white, because it might depend on what your black and white looks like. Some can be very low contrast, very muted. Some can be very high contrast and have very deep, rich blacks. And you might have a preference for matte or glossy paper. So just trying to grab a couple. There are some easy ones that I will say, like agave for a matte paper, holds the blacks really well, holds tones really well. And then the photo rag baryta is one of our like the go-to papers around here because it is so well rounded. It's good for high contrast and holding the blacks, and it's great for just having that whole range. And the coating is not like overwhelming. It's not going to distract, but it really does accentuate your image. I'm trying to dig through a stack of prints while talking.
You could show them as silver gelatin too.
Yeah, no, yeah, that will.
Okay. And someone just asked Joe if you wouldn't mind holding some of these up to the screen,
Yep,
a little, up to your beautiful
that's what I'm
camera.
trying to find them, but I've been digging through while I
Yeah,
talk.
gotcha.
So I didn't grab those first two because they are kind of basic ones everyone kind of knows about. But two of the more crazier ones, I'll say, not in a derogatory way, like fun crazy, is the metallic, like we talked about earlier. For certain black and whites, I think this really pops. The blacks really jump out because of that coating. And when you don't have, there's no color to really, there's no color. So sometimes the contrast between black and white is accentuated by the metallic paper. And I think it's wild. It's for certain things, for certain subject matters, the certain vibes. And the other one that I've liked for black and white, which a lot of people might not because it is so thick, but it is Hahnemühle's new bamboo baryta gloss. I was printing some black and whites on it when we first got it, and my coworker Lee walked by and said it looks wet, and it's true.
Yes.
It's such a thick gloss on top of a rag paper. I mean, it looks like Hahnemühle took their bamboo rag paper and just painted on this thick coating of gloss, and it's such a unique paper, and it's not for everything because it is such a strong texture, but when it works it's crazy. And I printed something I don't have near me, I don't think, but it has very deep blacks. It's mostly black, and then but it really jumped out, and it was so it's very quite cool. And then the other thing that I will say, I will mention, because it's not in competition with Hahnemühle because they're not in the analog world, is we do print on silver gelatin paper. So our non-inkjet process is the printing on true silver gelatin paper with from digital files. So you need to be film scans or from that we scan here, or you can send us your digital files and we can print them on the silver gelatin paper, which is the classic black and white paper. It's a true black and white, and it has stunning blacks, like great D-mags. So that's also definitely an option for printing black and white.
Yeah, just for your information, we do that by exposing the paper with a digital, the digital image. We expose it onto the paper with a photographic laser. So, but I also want to say that we had a question come up in the chat about using AI to select papers. And I just wanted to kind of, I think that was a really interesting question for one. But one of the things, and I think Joe kind of alluded to it when he was showing you the papers, especially that glossy baryta, a photorag baryta, is that paper choice is really personal. It's kind of like what you envision for the image and what you think as a photographer works best. And Vincent, did you want to show some examples that you had set up for us?
I can do that, yes. I have a few examples here. Yeah, right here. That should be it. Yeah, so when I have to talk about the selection process, usually I try to break it down in 3 questions. And all these questions, we are going to try to answer them in terms of comparisons to other papers. So if I ask you to tell me what's the value of the glossiness value of a paper on a scale, it's impossible to answer that. Sometimes for the glossiness or the texture, there is actually a scale that exists, but it's only used by scientists. It's not something we as regular human beings we know and we relate to. So the only way that we can choose paper is by comparison, really, because whether we think it's too glossy or not enough glossy for what we like, we're always going to agree with the person next to us that this is more than that or this is less than that, if we are doing a comparison. So that's really what we have to do, is comparing. And that's why again, the 3 prints are a brilliant idea. The first question really is, do you want a glossy or a matte paper? And there is kind of a red line in between. If it's going to reflect the lights that you have around you or on the ceiling, then it's a glossy paper. If it's not reflecting anything, or it's reflecting light, otherwise it would be black. But if it's not directly reflecting the light to you like a mirror would do, then it's a matte paper. And that's really the difference. That being said, on the glossy side, we will have things that are more high gloss and more like what we can call sometimes semi-gloss. So there are variations, but overall there is, on one side it's reflecting light, on the other one not at all. So that's one question. It has an impact on images. So I just took 2. For example, the one on the right, if you have a light on the ceiling and you're looking at the print on a table, and the light is reflecting just in the middle of the print, then you might just not see the flower or see it very poorly. So it will have the reflections of the light around the print will have a big impact on the way you perceive the picture. If it's the image on the left, then it won't be that much of a big deal because the image is mostly white. So if it's a reflection of the white light on the white background, it won't disturb you as much as the picture on the right. In the meantime, if you print the image on the left on a matte paper, it should be fine because there is not a ton of ink, so it won't scuff too easily. If you print the image on the right, looking at Joe right now, on the matte paper, you might want to be extra careful when you manipulate the print because it's definitely going to have the tendency to scuff more easily, and that's the reason. Technical reason behind that is a matte paper and a glossy paper are essentially the same. The difference is the thickness of the coating at the surface. On the matte paper, it's a very thin coating, so the pigments or the dyes of the inks are staying at the surface, and on a glossy coating, they are getting into the coating, so that prevents the inks from scuffing that easily. So again, it depends on what you want to achieve in terms of your intent as an artist, and also in how you're going to display the pictures. If it's going to be a portfolio that people are going to touch a lot, then I wouldn't go with the matte paper for the image on the right because it's going to be too sensitive for that. If it's going to be one print well handled by DSI that's going to go on your wall and you're never going to touch it again, it could work really well and you won't have any reflection wherever you stand in your living room, let's say. So that's great. And I'm really sorry, I can't tell you this paper is for black and white and that paper is for landscape. I can just tell you how it will impact what you're trying to do, and then you have to make your own decision because you are the artist, and I have tastes that are my own and you have yours. So that's one question, glossy or matte. Then the other one question is, do you want a paper that is very smooth or very textured? And again, I have 2 pictures to talk about that. The one on the left, you can see how much effort went into making the skin of on the 2 faces very smooth and very pure. And I'm not sure I would like to choose a textured paper to print that image because it's gonna I don't know how to say it's gonna fight back with the image in a way. It's gonna try to bring some texture in an image where we try to remove the texture completely. So it's not gonna fit really well with the image. Or you can prove me wrong if that's what you really want to try and then do it. But just my own opinion right now. And the image on the right, this one, I know it works really well on a textured paper because I've seen it printed. It's a picture of mostly snow and then a nice face in the center, but mostly snow. And when you try to take a picture of snow, you always have the problem where it's going to be either too overexposed and completely bright white and you don't have details anymore, or it's going to be a little bit too dark and it doesn't look like snow anymore. And it's always complicated to print something that looks like snow. And using a textured paper is great for that because you can print something quite light, even lighter than that. I had to to manipulate a little bit the image so you can see the borders of it. So it's a little bit darker than it should be, but you can print this quite light on a paper that have a texture, and then the texture of the paper is going to bring back the texture into the snow on the picture. So it's going to fit really well in this case. And by the way, people often think that because it's a textured paper, you're going to lose some details, you're going to lose in the precision of the printing. And it's not the case at all. On the contrary, it's like when you add noise digitally to an image. When you add noise, you add texture. When you remove noise, that's where you remove texture. So when you add texture by the paper that you choose to the image, you actually enhance the feeling of texture in the image itself. And this one on the right, when it's printed, you can count every hair on the face of the wolf without any problem. So I by my experience, I know it's not deteriorating the details at all. That's the second question. And the third one would be, do you prefer a warm paper or do you prefer a cool paper? And for me, that's the last one in the process. You have to answer the two first questions before this one, because this one is so dependent on where it's going to be, where the picture is going to be displayed in the end. You have way less control on that than on texture and glossiness. If it's going to be displayed in your living room, then you're going to have a different perception of it depending on the hour of the day. If it's in a gallery, then you hope that the lighting system in the gallery is calibrated too. Otherwise, it's going to feel a little bit different. So that there is a lot that can go wrong or right based on the environment when you display a picture, and that's why I think it's the least important criteria. But you still have the choice between papers that are warmer or cooler. And I like these two images because they react completely differently when you print these two pictures on a warm and a cool paper, and for both. The one on the left, if it's done properly, because of what Joe explained before, because of the ICC profiling that is done, you should get exactly you should get exactly the same print. It's never going to be 100%, but maybe 98, 99% exactly the same print, because everything that the color in the paper is countered or balanced by the ICC profile. So when you print an image on different papers, you should get exactly the same result all the time. It's not true if there is a lot of white in the picture, like the one on the right, because it's black and white, there is more white. So in this case, the tonality of the paper, the hue of the paper, it's going to be visible in all the white parts of the image. But the one on the left, since there is no real white, it's a gradient of blues and oranges, but there is no white. So you're never going to see the paper really. And so it should be the same on different papers, cool or warm. So yeah, I would say, especially if you print color, do not pay too much attention to the tonality, the hue of the paper. It's not going to be the biggest challenge for you. If it's black and white, yes, definitely this has a bigger impact. And these are my three questions to try to go through the process. I'm sure, Eric, you have more to say.
Well, I was trying to get to one of the questions regarding papers, because I think, I agree with everything you're saying, Vincent, that sometimes it's very subjective. And if you're really at a loss, we will definitely, as a team of photographers, be able to help recommend something after looking at your image. We will often tell people, email us something, we can take a look at it and talk to you about it. We don't charge you for that, for our advice. Advice is free. But there was an important question in here about your recommendations. It's from, hopefully I'm pronouncing the name right, Yoram. Do you have a recommendation regarding glass covered or uncovered display? And one of the things that we have invested in here in the lab is we have built a spray room. And we use the Hahnemühle UV spray in a very precise kind of spray gun. Hahnemühle does sell them in cans as well. If you're doing these at home, if you work with us, there's in an aerosol can, there's propellant. In our system, it's a nice even coating done with a with a spray gun. What that does is it provides a really good UV coating on most papers. It does not work on all papers. It does not work on resin-coated papers. We have had some issues with some of the alpha-cellulose papers, but all the ones that say photo rag that Vincent mentioned and many of the others, we can spray a coating on there for you that will actually provide an additional UV protection and against fingerprints. So if you're printing a portfolio, let's say, and you want to go and have people touching all your prints and we spray that for you, that'll help reduce fingerprints and scuffing and things like that, especially on matte papers, because that UV coating helps seal some of the ink in so that the surface doesn't flake off over time. So I strongly encourage you, if you're looking on our website, to learn a little bit more about our professional UV spray booth that we use, because it does add protection to the surface of the print. It will add UV, and it cuts down on the weight and the cost for you of framing a print, or if you're going to put it up on a wall using some of our print hangers or something like that, you can do it without that added expense and weight. And it's just a wonderful way, after you've gone through the exercise of selecting a beautiful paper, to then not cover it up with something like glass or something that has a high reflective surface. You still get to see the texture and the beauty of the paper you've selected.
Yeah, and I think that's something pretty unique. Not a lot of studios do that around the country. You're one of them, and people often are afraid it's going to change the print. It's not going to look the same after the spraying, but it actually is very, very close to the point where we say most of the time it's invisible. So you want to get a matte finish, you will get a matte finish anyway, even with the protective spray.
Yeah, Bruno asked that question, and basically on the semi-gloss fine art papers, it's virtually indistinguishable that we have sprayed it. Matte papers, you can see a slight change in the density. So if you order from us, we would probably accommodate that by maybe lightening the print just a hair or something like that, so that when we go to spray it, and you mostly will see that in the highlights, like if you have clouds or something in your image. But I will tell you that that's one of the beauties of the special liter bottles that we're able to buy, because we have this big spray gun that does not really change the look and feel of the paper. So.
And yes, the spray is generally available to answer Yoram's question. You can get, like Eric said, they are using the liquid version of it. They use that in a spray gun that has a specific spray gun that works really well with that. And you can also buy just a can with a propellant inside, and it's going to work quite well if you are doing that at home. Just to not do it in a closed space. I would recommend to do it outside, because it's written on the bottle that it doesn't harm, but it smells. So I would recommend to do it outside or with a very good ventilation system.
Yeah, we have built a spray booth. We use the spray that we use from Hahnemühle is water-based, I believe. But even for us, we've built a spray booth, and the fan that runs our spray booth is kind of like the size of a small airplane engine. So you really want to be careful about that. So we turn that thing on, everything in the lab gets sucked into that room if we don't close the door. So
including employees.
Mm-hmm. So also, I did also notice, and I'm taking kind of Catherine's job away from her. So sorry, Catherine, but the dreaded question, which I think you were alluding to, Vincent, about OBAs.
Yes, I think I saw it also in the chat. That's great. So what are OBAs, just to start with, because maybe it's not clear for everyone. OBAs are chemical components that are going to react to UV light, and they're going to, when you hit them with UV light, they're going to take that in, and they're going to emit something that is more like a blue light. So if you have, let's say, a very yellow paper, and you had a ton of OBAs, optical brighteners, in the paper, it's going to get, in a sunny day, it's going to get all the UV light and emit blue light. So in turn, the paper is going to look white. And we've known forever that it's not a perfect solution, but we still use some OBAs in our papers, and some of them at least, because for us it's the most reasonable way to obtain a bright white paper without having an impact that is too bad on the environment. Why is it a problem? Because OBAs, they are going to start to fade over time, and they are going to start to fade quicker than the paper itself. So the paper is basically gonna yellow a little bit, but it's really a little bit. If you compare, if you ever at some point try some printing on the PhotoRag and PhotoRag Bright White, or you end up finding at the trade show Hahnemühle sample book, and you compare the two, you will see there is a slight difference. One is warmer than the other. That will be the difference that you will end up with after a few, maybe 50 years, when the optical brighteners start to fade. You know, it's gonna tend to be closer to the warmer paper over a few decades, but it's never gonna be more than that, and then it's gonna yellow in a few centuries like the regular paper without OBAs, a little bit more. So eventually it's all gonna yellow anyway. But it's the question is, do you need to print on a bright white paper or not? If you want to do it, then we have a solution for you, which is a paper like the PhotoRag Bright White, in which there is a little bit more OBAs. If you don't need to print on a paper that is very bright white, then you can choose, for example, the hemp, which has no OBAs at all, and is going to print really well with the same coating that we have on the agave paper. So next generation coating, that's great. And then you don't have this issue. The other ways to make bright white paper are to use products that we either don't want to use because we know they harm the environment, or we just don't have the right to use at our mill in Germany, because I told you it didn't move for 400 years. It's also in a protected area, so we can't do everything because we have to protect the environment. So yeah. Does it answer the question about OBAs?
I think that does. I think that's pretty thorough. I think that something that we haven't touched on yet too is that not only are a lot of these questions about what is the right paper, but I think it's also considering where will the print go. So for example, if you're having, let's say someone asks you to have an exhibition in an area that has a lot of traffic, like a hallway or a coffee shop, you know, or a restaurant, that's going to impact what paper you choose. And, you know, again, the UV spray is always good for an application like that. Or if you have a print and you're making some signage along with the print, maybe a paper that has OBAs is a good choice, because it's not going to be something that you're intending to have up for a long time and you want it to have as much pop as possible, or a photo paper as opposed to one of Hahnemühle's FineArt papers might be a better choice. So I think that consideration of where is the print going to go should also be taken in.
Yeah, absolutely. I told you about the sustainable photo setting, which is a non-RC paper, so without plastic, but it looks like an RC. And actually, one of the reasons why we developed that paper is to go in all the luxury stores, that very luxury brands that do multiple campaigns a year, and they need to redo the whole decoration of the store every time, and they want to have new prints in all the frames all the time. So it's basically prints that are not going to be there for a long time, so they are going to be trashed pretty often, and they're going to turn into something that's not recyclable, because it used to be done on RC papers with plastic. So we decided that we were going to bring something that would fit exactly in that context, and it's definitely something that is also much more resistant to, you know, if someone comes and wants to wash the print with a cloth or something, it's not going to do as much damage as if it's a fine art print.
Just, and Yoram, I see your question. We do not sell paper. We are a print lab, so we don't sell it. But wherever you buy your paper, I don't know if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, but check with where you buy your papers to see if they stock the cans of Hahnemühle UV spray.
Yeah.
We also got a question asking about baryta.
That goes back to I love answering that question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It actually harkens back to the days of silver gelatin fiber-based papers, and originally papers did not have it, and it was the silver gelatin emulsion was just onto the base of the paper, and at some point they realized that by adding this layer of what was called barium sulfate or baryta, actually they were able to suspend the gelatin in that layer so that you got more three-dimensionality and more depth. And as inkjet papers evolved and wanted to emulate darkroom papers is when you saw the introduction of the barium sulfate or baryta layer. And I think Hahnemühle was actually one of the very first companies to do it. So that layer, that baryta layer, really gives your paper the look and feel of a classic silver gelatin print, that of a black and white silver gelatin print. That's where it comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully that answers that question. Yeah.
I saw something in the chat. Someone asked about bags and archival storage of prints. And they asked specifically about, I'm trying to look for the question, but that's
about clear bags.
Clear bags.
What we use.
Yeah. So I don't know if Joe, if you want to address that, or Vincent, if you want to address that.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't see the exact question, but I assume it's about print storage or transport.
Correct.
So yes, you want to make sure that your prints are always coming into contact with things that are acid-free and certified archival. Here we have clear bags from a company called Clear Bags that makes archival clear bags, among other things. So what that means is they're testing their products to make sure that it's not going to leach anything acidic or anything that's going to break down those layers in the coating that Vincent was talking about earlier into your prints and degrade them faster. So for like a quick transport, stuff like that, that's perfect. That's how we package all of our prints when you buy them from us. To be in a clear bag on a white backing board. Archival methods is someone else's saying in the chat is a company that does the same stuff. So yeah.
The other thing I want to just mention about archival storage and kind of an important term is something called outgassing. And what happens with inkjet prints is when you print them in these microporous papers, the papers, absorb the ink. But for a period of about 24 to, at least 24 hours, there's moisture in that ink. So just never immediately make a print and throw it into a sleeve or into a box, because we've seen situations where people have tried to frame things too quickly, and you literally can see ink then reappear on the inside of the glass. So don't encapsulate your print in anything right away. Try to give it at least 24 hours to let everything settle.
And I would say, if you want to follow the best practices in terms of archivability, you would also not want to let the print sit for 10 years in the clear bag, even though it's an archival product. You never want to have anything in contact with the print. So when you also bring a picture to be framed and you ask for the highest level of framing, you will see that the glass is never touching the print. In the same way, you don't want to have something touching the print directly like a plastic bag in a box. That's very good for temporary use, for transportation, for sending the print, or for a short amount of time, but it's not something good if you want to keep the prints for decades in an archive. But it's true that a lot of the contaminations, they can happen if the surface is open to the environment and the environment is not good. So you need to take care, first of all, of where to put the prints. Where do you want to store them? If it's in a very cheap, I'm sorry, IKEA, but IKEA furniture that is made of poor wood and a lot of glue, you're going to have an issue because the glue that is used is very acidic and it's going to attack the prints. So you want to look at metallic cabinets that do not use any glue or solid wood furniture that are high quality and use non-acidic glue, something like that. And you can also put them in cardboard boxes. There are cardboard boxes that are usually gray or bluish. Hahnemühle makes some in Europe, but it's European sizes, so we never brought them to the US, but you can find them at any serious photography store probably in the country. There are gray or bluish boxes that you can buy. You put your prints in them, and basically the box is made the same way an archival paper is made. So there is chalk in the cardboard. It's not your brown cardboard, it's a white one. It's also without lignin, without hemicellulose, so it's not going to yellow. And there is chalk, so it's going to act as an external buffer before the air even reaches the paper inside the box. That's also a good option.
Yeah, they actually will describe those products as buffered when you look them up. You know, the same retailers that were mentioned before, and also the box that your paper comes in is not an archival storage medium.
Absolutely, and that's why the paper inside is in a clear bag, because the box is a temporary transportation method, but it's not an archival one for sure.
Correct.
And Susan, you can you asked the question about what to layer them with. You know, if you go on to either of the places that Andrea recommended, whether it's archival products, university products, or archival methods, they sell different tissues that you can use to layer between the prints. Just make sure again that it's buffered, but that can be used as a protective tissue between layering your prints. And if you buy like one of their archival buffered boxes, you just would want to layer the prints with that. But just definitely read very clearly, because they make different tissues for different types of mediums, whether it's a painting or a photograph. So just read that carefully.
And to follow up on that, there's somebody else commenting, asking if stacking the prints will cause a problem. And I don't know if Vincent has anything else on that, but I would say no, as long as you wait that time for it to off gas. If you stack them right away, with parchment or not, it doesn't matter, because it's so stabilizing. So if you give them that time to off gas flat safely, and then you stack them in the box, I think it would be fine. Vincent, do you agree with that?
Yep.
I think I saw another question. Oh, sorry, Eric.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Joe, if you want to try to answer this question for JC about, you know, that since we don't soft proof, how can you tell if colors are out of gamut?
That is a great question. Here, this is not going to be the best answer, but I would say by printing. That's how I test everything. Like, I'll get a scrap of paper, I'll cut a piece of paper in half, and just print it. Because the computer can tell me all day that it's not in gamut, but it's up to, like, sometimes the printer can handle it, certain papers can handle it the better than other papers can. So the way I test those things is by just making the first print. That's how I would do that. Because it's hard to say print it. That's how I would test that out.
Then maybe, Joe, you can show what is a test print and or a proof.
Yeah,
So I know
let me
that
show
you
you
had
the way
some next
we
year.
have it make proofs. I think I've already shown you. No, I didn't. So this is how we make proofs here. So if you order one from us, this is a 13 by 19 sheet of paper where on the majority of it here in this big square, it's going to be 1-to-1 what your final print size is going to be. So this print was probably 40 by 60 because this artist prints massive prints. And then over on this side is going to be the full image squeezed down onto the piece of paper so you can see how the tones and the colors are going to work throughout the image. So this is great for seeing your detail and how that's going to hold up at a larger size. And this is great at seeing the overall values and the colors in the image. So doing something like this is great. Or even just if you have a smaller box of paper or you want to cut down a couple of sheets, then doing test prints is the best way to see how the things are going to print.
Yeah, I also, there's also a discussion going on in the chat, which is very interesting. And Bruno said that that maybe this is a leftover darkroom habit, but he prints a normal print first just to test for details. And another thing that I really want to emphasize, we talked about all these factors that lead up to choosing a paper. The paper also determines what your final print is going to look like. So we're all working on monitors, which are illuminated, backlit devices that kind of give us one way of perceiving an image. Print is a totally different way of perceiving an image, and you're not really going to get a very good idea of what the print looks like if you're not printing. But once you become habituated to a kind of paper, you'll develop a sense, that's probably what Bruno is kind of saying about what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, keep that in mind, that whole experience of a transmissive light, which is what we get when we look at these devices, right? Our images are being backlit. It's like looking at a color transparency. For those of you who remember those days, light is shining through the image when we're looking at a monitor. As soon as you get a print, now you're looking at reflected light. And was that reflected light off a matte paper, a textured paper, a glossy paper? And so again, all of that stuff about soft proofing, that's why personally and as the owner of the lab, I've just decided we will not do it. It sets up a false expectation.
At this point, I just want to ask Catherine, do we have any other questions to ask? Because we've gone like way over time.
Yeah.
That's all that I saw. I think we covered a good amount of information. And then, of course, both you guys and Hahnemühle will be sending out emails to follow up on the great promotion you guys are running. If you want to reiterate that one more time.
So we have something that we created again. It's called our PSP, Print Sample Promotion. It is on our website under products, but we will send you a dedicated email to take you right there. And we're going to send you a special code, which is, what was it, Andrea? Can you remind me? Is it?
Well, it'll be
paper?
in the email, so maybe we might not. I want to announce this, since it's going to be, we're going to also record this webinar, correct, Vincent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if you want to watch it again, actually, where would it be available, Vincent and Catherine?
Yeah. Yes. Once we wrap up here, the recording will be sent out to everyone, and then we'll also be sending out some information if people want to request a swatch book of our papers as well. So everything will be sent out from our side too.
Thank you. And just Bruno, that DSI 10 is for the 10% discount on the calibration device from Calibrite. That's not for the that is not for this promotion. This promotion is very specific for the print sample promotion, which is $14 off, and you'll get that in the email. So Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody, for a really great day. And I want to thank Vincent and Catherine for being here, and my colleagues from DSI. And I think we try to be here as a resource. We're not just a press and go kind of print lab. So we look forward to working with you, answering your questions, and earning your business. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. It's just so great to see a community of people that want to know more about printing and paper. That's what makes us want to get up in the morning. We really like what we do, so thank you. That's really great.
Definitely.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. Or
Yeah,
evening,
thank you,
depending where you are.
everyone.